So good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this side event here in room 25 of Palais Nation and online for the colleagues who are with us on the WebEx link today. Welcome to this side event on strengthening human rights through regional engagement, lessons learned from the Treaty Body Follow-up Review pilot series. We are organizing this event in cooperation with the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Pacific Community, SPC. The event today will be to discuss various ways, actually, in which the treaty body system can get closer to the regions, from full sessions in regional UN hubs to in situ follow-up reviews with a new 8-year review cycle. My name is Felix Kirchmeier. I'm directing the Geneva Human Rights Platform, and with me are distinguished speakers who will address different areas, actually, of how regional engagement can look like in the UN Human Rights Treaty Body system. We have Ms. Marcia Cran, member of the Human Rights Committee, Domenico Zipoli, project coordinator of our Geneva Human Rights Platform, Yasha Savi, I'm always saying Yash, so sorry if I massacre your name, Human Rights Advisor at the Commonwealth Secretariat, and His Excellency Ambassador Samuel Zaffa, Deputy Permanent Representative of Sierra Leone. The human rights treaty bodies are at a pivotal juncture, and I think you all being here in that room, you know what it's about. I will not speak for long as we only have 1 hour for our side event. But it's a pivotal juncture in their efforts to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of their work. Initiated by the report of the High Commissioner Navi Pillay in 2012, and here's a document I can show. We have other documents you can pick up. We cannot show them because I think civil society is always shrunk more and more. So we couldn't put things on your tables here, but we have a report of all our activities just at the entrance of the room. So from that report in 2012, a 10-year process of strengthening treaty bodies has set out and led to significant developments, including the conclusions of the chairs of the treaty bodies in June 22, the OHCHR working paper of May 23, and the chair's conclusion of 23 and soon to come 24. These milestones actually derive from the co-facilitation process on the treaty body review in 2020. That was a process co-facilitated by Switzerland and Morocco at the level of the General Assembly, which aimed to address the challenges faced by the treaty body systems, by the treaty bodies, and improve their functioning. I will not go much into the challenges. Again, we hear also from the panelists, and it would be quite long to go into those challenges, but we all know that the system is severely underfunded and also overburdened with the reports that are coming in, the communications coming in, and just the way how those can be dealt with. Part of a solution to the problems is the proposed 8-year predictable review calendar. The treaty bodies will carry out midterm follow-up reviews also in that frame. And the OHCHR working paper actually has set out options for consideration in that regard. In light of this, there have been several initiatives undertaken around the world to try actually options and provide the treaty body members with real-life experiences and empirical evidence on which to base their decision-making. We are here today, as I said, to explore those events, the outcomes, and what could that mean for the treaty body reform process. And well, turning to our first speaker, Marcia Cran, it's a pleasure to hear from you, Marcia, because, well, you've been member of the Human Rights Committee since 2017, but before that also Director of Research and Right to Development at the Office of the High Commissioner, and also Head of Policy and Program at the UNDP Regional Center for Asia and the Pacific in Bangkok. So you actually bring a lot of perspectives to that table. And I would just want to recall that when talking about regional engagement, so the title suggests follow-up reviews, but there is of course more than that. The CRC, the Child Rights Committee, for example, held an extraordinary session in the Pacific and returned then there 3 years later for a follow-up visit. And we learned that CEDAW just published its decision to have a Pacific session in the Pacific region, pending actually the approval from the Office of the High Commissioner. So we see there is really a movement also towards regional engagement by the treaty bodies. And Marcia, I would like to ask you to address exactly that. Before we talk about follow-up, let's talk about the sessions themselves. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Felix, for that enthusiastic introduction. Excellencies, participants, colleagues, I should say at the outset that I'm genuinely delighted that this side event is taking place the side event on regional engagement. And I'm very happy to have the opportunity this afternoon to discuss with you the benefits of regional engagement by treaty bodies to advance human rights. Holding sessions of human rights committees at UN regional headquarters holds great potential to reinvigorate our mandated functions. For many people across the globe, the treaty body system is unknown, or it's too difficult or too expensive to access. And the pilots held recently that Felix Kirchmeier has mentioned and that Domenico Zippoli will canvass in more detail, they have begun to demonstrate how regionalization can and does increase the effectiveness of UN human rights treaty bodies. In 2020, the co-facilitators of the treaty bodies strengthening process recommended that treaty bodies increase engagement with states at the regional level, and they endorsed organizing reviews of states at United Nations regional headquarters. UN regional headquarters are located in Addis Ababa, Bangkok, Beirut, and Santiago, as well as Geneva. And a feasible option for the Human Rights Committee, for example, would be for one committee session per year to be held at a UN regional headquarters outside of Geneva, rotating between the 4 regions. As a sitting treaty body member, and also having worked at the UN at the regional level for most of my career, I can see multiple benefits of regional sessions. The first is increased visibility. Location matters. With sessions in the region, treaty bodies would be more visible to officials, regional organizations, civil society in the region, as well as to resident UN agencies, funds, and programs. Media in the location would be more likely to report on the committee's work, and it would also boost visibility among experts from the region, prompting some of them to pursue membership in the treaty bodies and thus help achieve more equitable geographic balance in the membership of treaty bodies. Another advantage is enhanced accessibility and ownership by stakeholders. Sessions in the regions would increase public awareness of covenant rights and the mechanisms available for claiming those rights. This could have a ripple effect, as those who are engaged at the regional level would then be able to inform others within their local communities, and in turn, spreading the dissemination of treaty body recommendations could enhance uptake and follow-up of those recommendations that we make. A third advantage is increased engagement by regional stakeholders, such as state parties, civil society, and national human rights institutions, and greater participation by them. Sessions in the regional headquarters, closer to many state parties than Geneva is, would result in better interaction. Conversely, holding the sessions in the region would benefit the committee with a broader availability of reliable sources of information for our constructive dialogues. And a fourth benefit would be that the regional sessions could provide a platform to bring together a wide range of human rights actors and foster the formation of new regional human rights NGO coalitions. A fifth benefit is more relevant and effective state party reviews. High-level government officials often attend our sessions in Geneva. Regional sessions could prompt interaction with a broader range of officials and other stakeholders. By expanding the committee's presence, the institutional culture of the committee would not be so directly rooted in Europe, and this would enhance the legitimacy of the committee. The work of the committees is ultimately aimed at changes in practice in state parties to implement human rights obligations. A sixth advantage is that regional sessions would facilitate engagement with regional UN agencies, funds, and programs to increase their role in promoting human rights and to offer follow-up support to state parties to implement committee recommendations. And I'm referring here, when I say support, to both program and funding support. I could say a lot more about the potential here, as I think it is especially rich. I won't because of shortness of time, but I think you can grasp the multiplier effect that this could have on the impact of the human rights treaty bodies. We're all concerned about the UN liquidity crisis. There could also be significant cost advantages to sessions in the regions compared with exclusively in Geneva. I think most of you know that treaty body members work pro bono. We only receive an allowance, but the allowance in Geneva is generally one of the two highest daily subsistence allowances in all UN locations. So there are budget implications. And I mention cost effectiveness very deliberately because this point is often raised as a reason not to hold sessions outside of Geneva. But depending on how they're organized, regional sessions can be considerably less expensive. The UN regional headquarters have high caliber interpretation, conference, and other facilities. They have the setup that's necessary for treaty body sessions, and they also have reliable security. As an example, a session could be held in Bangkok, in Thailand, at the UN regional headquarters that houses ESCAP. And sessions in the regional headquarters can be planned in keeping with the regular 8-year calendar. So it wouldn't upset the 8-year calendar implementation that's now going on. So in conclusion, I would like to say that we all know that the international human rights system is now largely headquartered in Geneva, including with treaty body meetings, the Universal Periodic Review, the Human Rights Council. Thus, it becomes easy to understand why there might be at least a perception that the system is skewed toward perspectives in the global north. I think we need to shrink the symbolic and the geographical gaps between treaty bodies on one hand and state parties, the public, and human rights defenders on the other. Feasible steps such as regional engagement would contribute to treaty bodies remaining relevant or fit for purpose in today's global context. So those would be my remarks on the benefits of regional sessions. Thanks very much to all of you.
Thank you very much, Marcia, and thank you also for having come here during your session. It's currently on in Palais Wilson, so we also acknowledge that you may have to leave a little bit before the end of this event, but thank you very much for that presentation. That shows one of the ideas how to actually bring the processes of treaty bodies, bring Geneva closer to the regions, because I think it's also interesting the way you presented of one session out of 3 going to different headquarters, so that the center of that Geneva procedures remains, but actually how to better link it with the regions and the regional efforts. And this is exactly also part of the project we have been undertaking from the Geneva Human Rights Platform lately, where we actually did look into the treaty body follow-up. So you mentioned the new 8-year cycle, which was decided, which is not yet really fully put into place, but it's just to come. And I think the recent chairpersons meeting just a week ago in New York just reconfirmed that again. So this 8-year review cycle actually means it's quite a long stretch between full reviews. So a meaningful follow-up needs to be there in between. What that meaningful follow-up could be, there's 3 different options in the working paper by OHCHR, from full-fledged in situ reviews to a mere exchange of letters. And so what we set out was to pilot, actually, jointly with our colleagues from the Commonwealth and then also the Pacific community, pilot follow-up in the regions, and we started actually with a pilot follow-up in Sierra Leone. That's also why I'm very happy that you're here, Ambassador. Then Grenada, and then the Pacific region, where it was a regional endeavor. So those pilots, as I say, tested those 2 models, and I would like to turn now to you, Domenico, first, then to you, Yash, to enlighten us a little bit more about what those testing involved and how that could actually be also something that we could see a perspective of it becoming part of an official process. So Domenico, over to you.
Thank you very much, Felix. Thank you, Marcia, for such a beautiful and passionate presentation. Excellencies, treaty body members, colleagues and friends, good afternoon. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today to relay some of the insights from this exciting three-year project, the Treaty Body Follow-Up Review pilot series implemented together with our dear partners, the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Pacific Community. It is a particularly relevant year to be concluding this project with an important Treaty Body Chairperson's annual meeting just concluded 2 weeks ago in New York, and with the General Assembly biannual resolution on the Treaty Body system upcoming in December, where states will be tasked to decide on crucial aspects relating to the future of the Treaty Body system, including the introduction of a predictable schedule of reviews, which is the relevant pillar of reform specific to our discussion today. Our pilot series, as Felix mentioned, tested the feasibility of conducting follow-up reviews at both national and regional levels, and provided critical insights into the effectiveness of different models of follow-up review as a means to bring the treaty body system closer to both the rights holders and, of course, the duty bearers. In the next few minutes, I will first give a brief recount of the policy background, although Felix, of course, mentioned a couple of key points that we relied on when setting up our pilot series, outlining the policy lay of the land, so to speak. I'll then provide a few technical details on the project itself, providing a brief analysis of the 2 models tested. And following that, Yashasmi from the Commonwealth Secretariat, who has really been, I must say, a key player in kickstarting this project in Commonwealth member countries, will then outline some of the main outcomes and challenges of this pilot series. And we'll then close with some of our main recommendations for a future meaningful follow-up review procedure at regional level. Next slide, please. So let's start off with the outcome of the Treaty Body Review 2020 process, the report of the co-facilitators, Switzerland and Morocco. As you can see from the slide, paragraph 69 specifically acknowledges the positive value of introducing reviews in the region as an important step towards increased domestic stakeholder accessibility, enhanced visibility of the treaty body system, and closer interaction with the national and regional human rights systems. Therefore, the co-facilitators encourage treaty bodies' engagement with UN member states at regional level. And this, I must say, has been really a guiding star when devising our pilot series. Next slide, please. It was already mentioned by Felix, but indeed, fast forward to 2023, when the 34th annual meeting of chairpersons agreed to establish an 8-year review cycle for full reviews with a follow-up review in between. And as the document mentions, whereas the full review will consist of a review of all state obligations under the treaty in question, the follow-up review will cover up to 4 specific priority issues that were identified in the full review or that have since emerged. But at this stage, no modalities were set for such follow-up reviews. Next slide, please. So just last year, the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights published a very detailed working paper with options and guiding questions for the development of an implementation plan of these conclusions. And paragraph 32 spells out the options. You can see them on the slide here. 3 options are spelled out. Direct correspondence between the committee and the state, which is the simplest and cheapest, but indeed least substantive. And if one considers the 8-year cycle of reviews, you can see that the accountability gap here is pretty hefty. The second option is direct correspondence with a constructive dialogue, which would be a hybrid or online format, which indeed is a tad more comprehensive than that first option. And a third option is that of in situ visits by a delegation of treaty body members, which offers, to our understanding, the most comprehensive engagement. Next slide, please. So let's get to our pilot series. So 3 years, 3 pilots, 3 regions. And the pilot series tested 2 different models across 3 regions. The first and second pilot, held in Freetown, Sierra Leone in 2021, and St. George's in Grenada in 2022, respectively, tested the feasibility of multi-committee, national-level follow-up reviews. And on the Sierra Leone pilot, we will hear some reflections in just a moment from Ambassador Safa. And allow me to thank you, Ambassador, really for believing in and pioneering this process from the very beginning. For the first two pilots, as well as the third pilot, each participating treaty body nominated one member to take part in each pilot, who acted it in their individual capacity, as these were, of course, reviews of a non-official nature. I would like to stress that, of course. And as pilots go, of course, we learned by doing and following consultations with treaty body members and of the Office of the High Commission of Human Rights, amongst others, we came to the conclusion that the national level in-capital model, albeit delivering much better on many aspects in terms of strengthened accountability structure and expanded participation opportunities for national stakeholders, was somewhat too demanding, of course, bearing in mind the 193 member states. Next slide, please. So we looked at how to adjust the methodology, taking into consideration a multi-committee regional model for follow-up reviews, maximizing the role, UN presence, and infrastructure specific to UN regional and sub-regional headquarters. The third pilot was implemented in the Pacific region, specifically in Nandi, Fiji, in November 2023, in collaboration with our friends from the Pacific Community and the Commonwealth Secretariat, of course. And this regional follow-up review involved multiple countries, namely Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu. Members from the CEDAW, CRC, and CRPD participated in this pilot. And just as was the case for the previous two pilots, the recommendations under discussion were those recommendations issued by the committees under the follow-up procedure during the last full cycle of reviews. And the substantive overlap of recommendations among recommendations for follow-up has really been something noteworthy when devising the agenda. As a last point for now, when setting up the follow-up review agenda for this latest Pacific pilot, Pacific region pilot, as well as for the Sierra Leone and Grenada pilots, we relied on the modalities for review that take place here in Geneva. So on day one, we had, of course, an opening and closed-door briefings with national human rights institutions and civil society organizations from the three participating states. On day two and day three, we had treaty body-specific back-to-back sessions. And on day three, we added a capacity building session for all participating national stakeholders in order to make the most, of course, of the treaty body members' presence in the region, which is something that to this day is quite a rare occasion when discussing the implementation of human rights recommendations. I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll pass.
Thank you very much, Domenico, and Yash. We'll come to the outcome and challenges because, of course, as Domenico said, it was learning by thinking and learning by doing. So we also identified a number of challenges, and I'll let you focus on that now.
Okay, sorry. The presentation, okay. Yeah, good.
Thank you so much, Felix, and good afternoon, and good afternoon, Excellencies and colleagues. Thank you for joining us today. The Commonwealth Secretariat is pleased to have partnered with GHRP since the inception of this project to deliver these three projects, and also joined by SPC to deliver the last and the final project, the final project in the Pacific. And we are also pleased to support today's event to share the lessons learned from these three pilot treaty body follow-up reviews in the series. We are also happy to note that the 5 countries who participated in the pilot project are from the Commonwealth member states, Sierra Leone, Grenada, Fiji, Vanuatu, and Tonga, and 2 of them, they do not even have a permanent presence in Geneva. So that is Grenada and Tonga. So for many years, the Commonwealth Secretariat has been providing technical assistance to small states for their reporting to treaty bodies. And through this experience, we understand the challenges faced by these small states, whether it's about submitting the reports to treaty bodies or the accessibility of these treaty bodies to the various stakeholders in the country. And that's why when the idea of follow-up review surfaced, it was we partnered with Geneva Human Rights Platform to see the viability and feasibility of these process and to see if it's actually beneficial for these small states or it's going to be a burden on these member states. You have already heard from Dom about the different modalities and background of treaty body focus review, follow-up review, as well as the treaty body reform process. I will very quickly touch the key outcomes which we monitored during the delivery of these three projects. Some of the key benefits were already mentioned by Marcia. So the first one is the strength and accountability structure in light of the new 8-year cycle. So as you are aware, some of the treaty bodies have already implemented 8-year cycle. So that means the review will take place instead of 4 or 5 years, it will take place in 8 years. So that gives a protection gap. And having an in-country or regional review in between two sessions will definitely promote accountability. It will also help the civil society to get better attention and understanding of the recommendations. There will be better monitoring of the recommendations, which can lead to better accountability. Second one is improved accessibility for national and local human rights actors across the Pacific region, as well as on the other regions. So as you can see, and also Marcia mentioned that the treaty body delegations who arrive in Geneva, they are very limited. And also sometimes the civil society can't even attend these sessions because of the travel associated cost. So to have a follow-up review in the capital or in the region will provide accessibility to much more wider stakeholders. And we have noticed this in the Grenada and Sierra Leone, as well as in the Pacific regions, that all the members of the NMIF, they actually participated, as well as the various grassroots level civil society could actually participate and interact with the treaty body members. The next one is empowering national stakeholders for multiple countries to better engage in the treaty body reporting procedure. Again, this was also mentioned by the Marcia, but it's very clear that once, if you have a treaty bodies in capital, in the region, it helps the various stakeholders to actually participate and engage and make their submissions, and also understand how these mechanisms actually work. The next one is the contextual, the heightened precision and consideration for the regional context and realities. In the reviews that we conducted in Grenada, Sierra Leone, and Pacific, the treaty body members could actually interact with various civil society actors. They could actually visit various institutions and see how these treaty body provisions are actually implemented in practice. So this also gives much more clarity to the treaty body members, and this helped in the interactive dialogue. They could ask specific questions, as well as more contextual recommendations were recorded. Next one is fostering collaboration and peer-to-peer learning among national stakeholders, as well as among the countries. So we noticed that in the Pacific, we invited 3 countries that were Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu. And it was a really good opportunity for them to talk to their peers and see how they are actually addressing this backlog of treaty bodies. And most of the delegates were actually, it was their first time interacting with the treaty bodies. And similarly, the civil society also had this opportunity to engage with other civil society from the region, as well as different countries, to see how they are actually engaging, how they are monitoring various recommendations, and how they are helping government in implementing. So it was really a sharing of good practices and engaging and building network, which was facilitated during these reviews. The next one is enhanced constructive environment. We did surveys post this evaluation, post these reviews, and almost all the regions, they confirmed that this was the treaty body, the civil society as well as the delegates, they were much more comfortable in engaging, and the dialogue was much more open as compared to Geneva. So they were feeling much more comfortable to be in their region or in their country to engage with the treaty body members. So there was really a constructive environment, and treaty body members could also receive much better information because of this open dialogue. Last one is amplifying the visibility of the treaty body system. Again, it was mentioned by Marcia, but almost in all the regions, there was a lot of media publicity. Treaty body members could actually interact with the media and highlight why they are in the region or in the country. And that could give much more better understanding of what treaty body systems are, what are the state obligations under these treaty bodies. So that was also give much more visibility to treaty body system. And even we noticed that many civil society, they were open to actually make more submissions and interact with the treaty bodies. Challenges, the next one. So And the last, okay, so we can't have any project with just positive outcomes. We also had several challenges. And so some of the challenges or basically the factors which could be used to improve the follow-up reviews in future. The first one is the regional representation of treaty body members. So one of the key factor was, or our suggestion is that it's good to have treaty body members from the region so that they understand the cultural and social context, and the discussions can be much more informative and context with much more context oriented. The next one is the participation of UN agencies. UN agencies plays a key role. We didn't have many submissions during our reviews for many factors, but it will be good to have more additional submissions from the UN agencies so that treaty bodies will have much more information and additional information other than the civil society submission as well as the state submission. So to have a better participation from the UN agencies can make the treaty body constructive dialogue much more informative and more interactive. The next one is timeline and pre-follow-up review guidance, and also linked with is the submission of replies to follow-up review questionnaire. So in our review, one of the challenge which highlighted by almost all the participants of the reviews was that the timeline was too strict. And many times the timeline was strict because we received late response from the state because of several bureaucratic hassles, etc. So the suggestion is, like, if you have because of the strict timeline, we did not get enough responses to the questionnaires and follow-up questionnaires. So the idea is, like, if you are going to do a follow-up review, please, we would suggest to have a better timelines to give enough time to civil society as well as state actors to give submissions on time. The last is, second last is logistical challenges. It was mostly important, especially in Pacific, because you have a lot of civil society, state actors we are inviting in the region, and also there are some treaty body members coming from different continents. So it's really important to deal with those logistical challenges, and that can also link to the time. If you have enough time, you can actually reduce these logistical challenges. And the last one is vulnerability to extreme weather events. That is, again, also much more relevant for the Pacific and the Caribbean. And actually, we also had to delay our reviews because of these hurricane season, etc. So while delivering these in-country regional reviews, it should be taken into consideration these cyclone season, etc. in the reviews. So I hope these findings are useful for the discussions for the delegates from various missions as well as for the OHCHR. And I stop here, and thank you, Felix.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes, and we'll come to the recommendations in just a minute, but also to say that, of course, the challenges, not the extreme weather events, but a lot of the other challenges were due to the informal nature of the activity. So if that took place on a programmed 8-year schedule, I think there would be also differences in the challenges. But before we come to recommendations, I would like to turn to Ambassador Safa. It was already mentioned you were a pioneer in this project, and actually it's always quite a thing to convince the first country to pilot something, and you were bold enough to say, yes, that sounds interesting, let's look what it is like. And I also want to acknowledge the presence of Julio Vega here in the room, who was with us at the platform at the time, also a veteran of that project. So Ambassador Safa, how did you see that from the national perspective, this informal, of course, activity, and how has it impacted actually on your country's engagement with the treaty body system? So please, over to you.
Okay, I must start off by thanking you, Executive Director Kishmaya. And as you said, I recognize the presence of Julio. Julio was very much significant and very helpful during the course of that process. I must acknowledge from the outset that this focused review exercise is an initiative which was actually born out of the Geneva Human Rights Platform. And as a beneficiary state and a guinea pig, put it correctly, we were truly privileged and blessed to have received, well, to summarize it all, that level of capacity building, which was truly and significantly important to our mechanisms, which in fact, apparently we had just established the national reporting mechanism. So the coming of this review process was really timely and very helpful. But then please bear me to just share my perspective on this focus review very briefly. Now, the focused review approach combines ongoing efforts to improve the follow-up process with the treaty bodies' new strategy to transform their reporting cycles. By moving to an 8-year review cycle for comprehensive review in Geneva, this model responds to the evolving needs to today's treaty body system. This includes maintaining the reporting schedules set out in the treaties while adopting the context that require more appropriate reporting methods, particularly for state parties striving to achieve full reporting compliance in the midst of various challenges such as increased ratifications, new conventions, and a stagnant budget, and obstacles to full participation of domestic stakeholders. Now to the review, and I'm very pleased to share Sierra Leone's perspective as well during that pilot phase. The pilot treaty body focused review in Sierra Leone represents a groundbreaking milestone, as it is the first instance in which this particular model has been tested. This innovative approach marks a pivotal moment in the evolution of the treaty body system, which aims to improve efficiency and effectiveness of the human rights monitoring and implementation. For Sierra Leone, participating in this pilot not only underscores our commitment to upholding international human rights treaties and standards, but also places it at the forefront of the innovation human rights practices brings to the fore. Through this initiative, we demonstrated commitment to transparency, accountability, and proactive engagement with the international human rights framework. The treaty body follow-up review pilots series has provided invaluable insights into the improvement of follow-up new procedures, which are critical to the effective implementation of human rights obligations. Sierra Leone had the privilege of participating in the pilot initiative, and we would like to share our experiences and reflections on the process in totality. The pilot series of the treaty body follow-up reviews took place in December in 2021, almost 2 years ago now. This initiative was organized by the Geneva Human Rights Platform and the Commonwealth Secretariat, of course, in collaboration with the Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone here in Geneva and our Foreign Ministry in Capital. The pilot was a review conducted between the full reporting cycles at the national level to provide an update on implementation of specific recommendations from 4 treaty bodies. And these were the Human Rights Committee, the Committee Against Torture, the Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and the CRC. Now, prior to the conduct of the event in Capital, there are certain modalities and formats which the process itself in Capital followed. And these were some of the steps. The first was the selection of treaty body members and the establishment of our own team back home in Capital. Already, we had established the Interministerial Committee prior to the establishment of the Monitoring Committee. We had the Interministerial Committee, which was already established. And then, of course, you had from the OHHR and Geneva Human Rights Platform, they had put together the committees that would come in country to conduct this exercise. Now, step 2 was the identification of recommendations for focused review. We identified, based on the committees whose recommendations would serve as the focused review itself. And then step 3 was the development and submission of focused review questionnaires. So once those recommendations were put together, we now have a questionnaire which was prepared by the Geneva Human Rights Platform and submitted to us, which we in turn sent to the task force back in Capital to respond to those questionnaires. And then we had responses from those questionnaires, which we submitted again to the Geneva Human Rights Platform. And then the 5th was the focus review session, which of course itself was the exercise in capital. Now, let me just share with you some of the benefits and outcomes of the review itself in Freetown. The pilot review produced significant results, particularly in strengthening national capacity to engage with treaty body system and follow-up processes. Participants highlighted several key outcomes, and among them, I'll just highlight few because of want of time, is the strengthening of institutional capacity. Secondly, was a broadened understanding. And don't forget the presence of the treaty body members. I mean, these are the reservoir of knowledge in terms of the treaty body. So their presence had enormous impact on our team back in capital. Of course, another benefit was accountability and democratic governance. We had practical experience with the presence of the treaty body members. And it will interest you to know that because of the influence of the Geneva Human Rights Platform, we didn't only receive those sitting committee members, but there are former committee members who also were in country during the course of the exercise itself. Guidance for future participation was also another positive outcome of the review. Now, we also had increased confidence. Now, when in fact we receive the list of issues prior to reporting, if you look at that one, you will see how complex and multifaceted the issues are in those questionnaires. So when you have the treaty body members with you in capital, you have a face-to-face experience with them to pose some of those very critical questions to them so that they'll guide you as to how you respond to those questions. I think on the one hand, I have shared with you some of the benefits or outcome of the review. I would also want to use the opportunity to also share with you some of the benefits we had as a result of the presence of the treaty body members. Now, we had the opportunity, as with the treaty body members, first experience in terms of national context on the issues as they reflect on our social and cultural aspects in Sierra Leone. There was avenue for improved communication and trust between us and the treaty body members. Of course, solid relationships were also built, and the chief of it all was capacity building, which I made emphasis on earlier on. I see Domenico is prompting me one out of time. All right, so let me just conclude by stating that the pilot series of treaty body follow-up reviews has demonstrated the immense value of national and regional engagement in strengthening human rights. The experience has provided Sierra Leone with the tools and insights needed to improve our human rights practices and has underscored the importance of collaborative efforts in achieving our human rights goals. We remain committed to continue this journey and to share in our experiences with other nations to collectively advance the issues of human rights globally. And with that, I thank you very much and yield the floor back to you, Executive Director.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for sharing those experiences indeed. And I think there is also more experiences maybe to share from the other piloting countries who worked with us. Let me just speak about one last slide, which are our recommendations. And you find actually two documents in the back of the room, the joint report of Commonwealth and the GHRP, and also the report of the Pacific Community, which is a little bit broader because it also includes the experience in Samoa of the 84th extraordinary session of the Child Rights Committee. So you find those documents with a lot of details on the recommendations. But let us just say that for us, what was clear is that a key to all of that is the 8-year cycle of reviews that was mentioned. It's a meaningful follow-up reviews in between that could take place at regional or, as we saw in Fiji, at sub-regional UN hubs that can deliver accountability, assistance, and awareness. And I think if we look at the OHCHR working paper and the options it brings, we kind of add a new one. We don't go for the correspondence only. We don't go for online only. We noticed also how beneficial it is to be in situ in each and every state party, but how challenging that might be in terms of budget and logistics. So the current correspondence-based manner with an additional constructive dialogue at regional level is really what we found was a very worthwhile exercise to do. So that's like, in a nutshell, the main recommendation. But with this, I'd like to throw it open for your questions and also, of course, provide the opportunity to colleagues. I see a colleague from Vanuatu here in the room. If you'd like to also add anything from your experiences in those in this process. And yes, just open the floor for the remaining 10-15 minutes that we have in our short event. So please, the floor is open.
Oh, it's flashing. Okay. Hi, thank you. I just want to thank the panelists. There's so much compelling discussion on why these regional treaty body processes are really important. I guess my question, we've spoken a little bit about the inputs that the OHCHR called for in terms of going forward, and then we've also spoken about the process in New York in December. What are the key steps between now and December? How do we, as states, how do we best make sure that these messages are land where we'd like them to be? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just take a couple of questions because we only have one round, so I'll invite other colleagues for comments or questions. Yes, please.
Much for the presentations. I had a question about the focus is obviously on treaty bodies, but how does the rest of the UN system figure in this work? The Universal Review, the work of the special rapporteurs. I'm also thinking of that because of a point that you made, Yash, about you know, the protection gap, and in that context also, it's important that in the teams that go for the focused reviews, other experts are also included. So I'm wondering if this has come into your thinking because of this all mechanisms kind of focus we're all trying to push. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation and congratulations on the project. My name is Jus Vega Bezerra from the Interparliamentary Union. In the IPU, we work engaging parliaments and parliamentarians in the UN human rights mechanisms, including the treaty bodies. And recently, we have seen a trend of inclusion of MPs in the delegations to the treaty bodies, for example, CEDAW, CRC, and Human Rights Committee. So my question is, to what extent MPs, or there was some appetite to include them in this, these exercises in the pilot series, as well considering that through budget allocation and adoption of national law and policies, they can really play a role in bridging the implementation gap. Thank you.
Yes, please, sir.
Yeah, thank you, esteemed chair, delegates, and colleagues. I think I will share from Vanuatu's experience. Vanuatu would like to thank the Commonwealth Secretariat and SPC and GHB for conducting the regional pilot project review in the Pacific. Vanuatu has been part or participated in the 2023 treaty body follow-up review pilot series held in Fiji. The experience is commendable with the extent of invaluable exchanges between members of the treaty bodies and states. The regional review has enabled fair representation of states' participation, including NGOs and civil society. The cost of having to bring all state participants to regional review is reduced by more than half the cost of having just a handful of participants to Geneva. The experiences and the impact from the Pacific region pilot cannot be understated. Vanuatu would like to highlight some of the key takeaways from the pilot. The pilot has demonstrated regional collaboration is essential for the effective monitoring and implementation of human rights, fostering closer ties between neighboring countries and regional organizations, sharing best practices, addressing common challenges, and supporting each other in fulfilling our human rights obligations, enabling development follow-up mechanisms, and that are sustainable and adaptable to regional contexts as crucial. The pilot success shows not just flexibility, but understanding enough to address a diverse cultural and socio-economic landscape when maintaining the integrity of human rights standards. Collecting and analyzing data from pilot reviews provide a solid foundation in forming decision-making. The data-driven approach allows for the identification of gaps, the measurement of progress, and the formulation of strategies that are both effective and efficient. The pilot highlighted the immense potential for regional engagement in human rights monitoring and implementation by leveraging regional networks and creating visibility of treaty bodies and create a supportive environment where countries can learn from each other, innovate, and collaborate more effectively. This regional approach not only strengthens individual country capacities, but also contributes to the overall empowerment of human rights protection and realization regionally and globally. In conclusion, Vanuatu's participation in the treaty follow-up review has provided us valuable experience and lessons. We are committed to continuing our efforts to strengthen human rights through regional engagement and to contribute to the ongoing dialogue on enhancing the vision and impact of United Nations human rights treaties. Vanuatu recommends and calls for continuous mid-term review engagement. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll come with this back to the panel because we have to close our event now also. So maybe 2 minutes each. Yes, if I can start with you on those questions. Well, I just let you pick and we'll go through the panel.
Thank you so much, Milun, for your question on the inclusion of special procedures recommendations and treaty bodies UPR recommendations. So during the compilation of the recommendations for the questionnaire for the states, we actually did link it with the UPR and special procedures recommendations. So the states were aware where these recommendations are coming from. Of course, they were the follow-up recommendation from the treaty bodies, but they were also linked with the UPR as well as the special procedures recommendations. And very quickly on Julio's question, yes, you are right. Without parliamentarians or the political will, it's not possible to go anywhere, especially for where the finances are involved. But most of the times, these pilots were in participation with the governments. So as Ambassador Safa already mentioned, that it was with the permanent mission of Sierra Leone as well as with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And even sometimes in the Pacific review, for example, Fiji actually had to do a cabinet paper, so which was actually approved by the cabinet. So in all the cases, the government was involved, they were informed about this, and they were actually opened by the high-level dignitaries, either from the permanent secretary level or the minister level rank person who came to open and close the sessions. So thank you.
And Ambassador Safa, if you want to go ahead with there, also with Parliament's role especially.
Yes. So clearly, as we all know, aside from their legislative role, parliamentarians also provide oversight to departments, agencies, and all. Now, so in meeting, their various obligations, it is so useful and very important, and Parliament truly play a central role in all of this. When recommendations are made with respect to policies or the enactment of certain or ratification of certain instruments and all, it falls within the purview of Parliament to actually do all of that. So again, I will agree with you that indeed, parliamentarians forms an integral role in all of these processes.
Thank you. Domenico, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the interesting questions. A lot has been replied to already. Just perhaps one point on the question regarding the relevance of this piloting vis-a-vis other mechanisms, other UN human rights mechanisms, and regional human rights mechanisms. In fact, when devising a new pilot, a new procedure, which was the case, right, 3 years ago when we started reflecting on how to make a follow-up review procedure as contextual and as relevant as possible, we tried to be at the forefront of everything that is being discussed in terms of forward-looking policy. So the all mechanisms approach that Milun mentioned earlier on was very much in our minds, so much so that within the documentation that was prepared, we were acting as secretariat, right? Our role was that of secretariat of these pilots. We did prepare recommendations that not only had a mapping of the official recommendations that were issued by the different committees under the follow-up procedure in the previous full review, but also recommendations that were relevant to those themes within, as far as the UPR is concerned, as well as special rapporteur recommendations are concerned, and regional mechanisms are concerned. So this is just in a nutshell, just a quick reply to you, Milun.
Thank you very much. Running out of time, but I cannot stop without replying to the question by the colleague from Australia, actually, also in terms of what are the next steps from here, because of course we heard about the positive examples, and I think the regional cooperation, the national cost also actually mentioned by our colleague from Vanuatu is very important, because what it comes to now, of course, is also the question of what would that cost, what would be the addition to the budget of treaty bodies currently. And there, it was mentioned before, we have a crucial moment this year with, in December, the resolution at the General Assembly by Iceland and the core group on the treaty body system. And I think this is really the next important key steps for states. It is to support the outcome of the treaty body. So you'll soon have the report of the treaty body meeting, of the chairs meeting of this year, actually, which will show again how supportive they are and how for once they are quite unified actually in their approach and calling for those new mechanisms. And you have the OHCHR also starting some costing of what those options would cost, showing that it's not such a huge sum we talk about. And I think here for the state, it would really be to take steps to also engage from Geneva with the core group in New York, or through your missions then in New York, to make sure that this resolution that will come before the third committee this year is a meaningful one. We are now 10 years after the famous resolution 68268 that set the new framing for the treaty body system and which allowed it actually not to drown until now. The uncomfortable situation of the treaty body system has been maintained by a lot of savings within the system for the last 10 years, but this is not sustainable. So I think it's really the next step for states is to see what that resolution can bring, what the Summit for the Future can bring, also including via the general strengthening of the High Commissioner's work and budget. So where that can go, because the work on treaty bodies, it's mandated activities, it's state obligations actually, and the treaty bodies in the current setup cannot cope with the workload and cannot meaningfully deliver. So I think those are the steps that I wish that states could envisage from now until December to actually enable the treaty bodies to continue their work and to really do it in an effective manner. With this, I'd like to close our event. Thank you very much of all of you who came to the room here, who were with us today online in this event. Thank you very much. And as I said, the resources, the detailed recommendations and all of that is on all our websites, but also the reports here in the back of the room. I'd like to thank the speakers very much again for having been there, and thank you to all of you for participation.